Hey guys, I hope this video finds you well, or as well as you can be in these interesting times. But today, Sarge and I have come to talk to you about my top 3 favorite books. Now, I happen to own all of these books. I try not to buy too many physical books generally because books are expensive and I read them so quickly that unless I know I'm going to read them over and over and over again, it's really kind of a waste of money. So generally, from day to day, I use an online library to get books on my iPad, and then I can read whatever I want. I guess I'm just a little tired. Anyway, I can read whatever I want, whenever I want. But I do occasionally buy books when I know that I'm going to read them again. So usually I'll read a book from the library, and if I love it enough, I will purchase them. And that is what has happened with these 3 that I'm going to tell you about today. My first book is technically a series, but I'm going to keep it in because it's great. This is The Cuckoo's Calling by Robert Galbraith, aka J.K. Rowling. Now, I know J.K. Rowling has been controversial as of late on the internet and things like that, but I don't want to get into that, honestly. I would rather just talk about her writing, and whatever feelings you may have about the woman, her writing is phenomenal. And this book is no different. So originally, if you don't know the story, she released this book under a pen name, as I said, and planned to keep it sort of on the down low. Harry Potter had ended a few years before. Her next novel, The Casual Vacancy, hadn't done so well under her own name. That is, it had been bought a lot because it was J.K. Rowling, but the writing itself was considered kind of iffy. So I suppose she wrote this book under a new name to see if it could gain as much popularity as Harry Potter had, and it did. Unfortunately, the secret was leaked pretty quickly. I think it was around 2 weeks after publication, so by the time I got it, I knew it was by J.K. Rowling. But that didn't stop me from reading it and loving it. So what is The Cuckoo's Calling and the series about? It is the Cormoran Strike series, and it is an adult, private eye sort of detective novel featuring the aforementioned Cormoran Strike as an ex-army, now private eye, and his assistant Robin. So they go around solving different crimes, maybe crimes that the police didn't look into or that they have been hired to by someone who wants the crime to be investigated. Basically, that's how private investigation works, duh. So The Cuckoo's Calling focuses on a model who died. It appears to be a suicide. However, her brother hires the detective to try and figure out if she was murdered, which is what he believes, and the police are not taking him seriously because it appears to be an open and shut suicide case. The model was bipolar, which they take to mean, unstable, even though she had been stable for years, and she had been found on the ground under her apartment, like she jumped or was pushed out of a window. That's what this motion is meant to be. And in this book, Robin has just been hired as a temporary secretary and then kind of moves into being a more active assistant in the sort of detecting role, if that makes sense. I really enjoy these books. Unlike Harry Potter, they aren't for children, so they don't shy away from things like swearing and sex and drugs. I remember being shocked the first time I read this, and they used a really bad word, and I was thinking, this is the woman who wrote, like, my childhood, basically, and now she's using, these bad words. But if you know me in real life, I swear like a sailor, so obviously this doesn't affect me that much. I believe there are 4 books in the series, and I would recommend all of them. They are completely amazing. Definitely would check them out. They are not an easy-to-guess mystery. She does a really good job at crafting, difficult-to-solve mysteries, which I personally enjoy. My next book is also the first book in a series, but I have not yet read the second one. It is called Carry On by Rainbow Rowell, and the best way I can describe it is gay Harry Potter fan fiction, sort of, but it's amazing. I don't know. So this is a young adult book. I believe, so this author wrote a book called Fangirl, and it was about a girl who wrote a lot of fan fiction. And I believe the fan fiction was for this world, which was called Simon Snow as the main character. And then that book became so popular, I believe people asked her to actually write a book series about those characters, which were kind of based off Harry Potter. So she did that, and I love this book so much. It's a young adult book, so it's not as adult as my last choice, but it's so relatable and it's so interesting, and the way So the way that magic works in this world is that it's all word-based, and I adore words and writing and things like that, and reading, obviously. So the fact that you could craft spells based on using turns of phrase and things like that is really interesting to me. I really liked that idea. And it's kind of just, it gives more of an insight of what it must be like to be the so-called chosen one. Because Harry Potter, you know, doesn't really address some of like the trauma that would come from being a young child having to fight bad guys all the time, or being worried about your friends and your family, and, you know, wondering, it sort of does in the seventh book, but, you know, wondering what it's like to feel like that. What is it? Harry doesn't really have trouble adjusting when he gets taken from, you know, the Muggle world into the Wizarding world. But that would be an insane culture shock. So that this book kind of addresses all of that, and it's gay. So you can't go wrong with gay romance in my book. You know, we get so little representation as it is that any crumb I would hold on to and eagerly talk about. And this is, you know, the entire. This is kind of a spoiler. I think it's pretty known that this is quite a gay book, so we'll say that. So this is called Carry On. The second book is called Wayward Son. Yes, this is a direct reference to the Kansas Carry On My Wayward Son song. I still need to read the second one. I haven't found it online yet because it only came out, I think, this year, and I've had it on hold for a while, so hopefully I get it soon. But yeah, I don't know if I've explained this well enough, so I might just read the book jacket. But I think, yeah, I'll just read the book jacket. So, Simon Snow is the worst chosen one who's ever been chosen. That's what his roommate, Baz, says. And Baz might be evil and a vampire and a complete get, but he's probably right. Half the time, Simon can't even make his wand work, and the other half, he sets something on fire. His mentor's avoiding him, his girlfriend broke up with him, and there's a magic-eating monster running around wearing Simon's face. Baz would be having a field day with all this if he were here. It's their last year at the Watford School of Magics, and Simon's infuriating nemesis didn't even bother to show up. Carry On is a ghost story, a love story, and a mystery. It is just as much kissing and talking as you'd expect from a Rainbow Rowell story, but far, far more monsters. So it kind of combines different Harry Potter elements. There's like the nemesis missing that we see in book 6, the whole chosen one thing, but there's more diversity. There's interesting magic. It's just, I love this book so much. It's not a very serious read either. Like, I mean, The Cuckoo's Calling gets into some very real issues about mental illness and addiction and affairs and things like that. And this book isn't like super happy or anything like that, but it's definitely what I would call a comfort read. If you kind of want to read something that just takes you into another world, go with this. Or with my final book, which is my favorite book of all time, The Night Circus. My most recent tattoo, which is really hard to show on camera because of where I got it on my arm. There, you can kind of see it. Is based on this book. So my tattoo says "Je suis une rêveuse," which means I am a dreamer in French, and then it has a top hat and a scarf. So if you read this book, you will understand the symbolism of all this. I will give you a hint. Rêveuse is the feminine form of rêveur, which is mentioned in this book quite a lot, because I didn't want the masculine form on my arm, because correct grammar is important in tattoos. I refuse to be any of those people with like incorrect spelling tattoos. Never. Anyway, The Night Circus. It is set in the late 1800s to early 1900s. And it is the most magical, most fantastic book I have ever read in my entire life. You can tell how this cover is kind of like worn because I've read it so much. If I know you in real life, I have probably tried to get you to read this book, either by suggesting it or just saying, here's my copy, read it, and then give it back to me. I first heard about this from Carrie Hope Fletcher, who is another YouTuber. I love her videos so much, and she mentioned that this was her favorite book. And she also reads a lot, and she used to talk about books fairly often on her channel, so I thought, you know, I'll give it a shot. I like fantasy, but it has to be a particular kind of fantasy for me, if that makes sense. Sometimes I can't get into medieval fantasy as much, which is weird because of how much I play Dungeons & Dragons. But regardless, so fantasy worlds have to be very compelling to suck me in, and this one did. How would I even describe this? So there are two magicians, which is what they call themselves, but they do real magic. It's not like, you know, bunny out of the hat, although one of them is also a stage magician, so he does do the bunny out of the hat thing. Anyway, they are playing a game, and the game is to prove who is the best magician, basically. And they do that by having a student each, whom they train, and then those two students will compete against each other. So the teachers themselves don't actually do anything, if that makes sense. And each game is different, and they don't really talk about other games, but this one is set in a circus. And the participants, of the two challengers, I should say, know they're in a game, but they don't know, well, one of them knows who their opponent is, and the other one does not. So the two challengers are called Celia and Marco. Marco knows that Celia is his opponent. Celia does not know who her opponent is, if that makes sense. And it is all set in this amazing circus that only comes out at night. And that is, you know, kind of magically enhanced. That's sort of what they do, but they don't know how to win, and they don't even know what they're supposed to be doing. They just know that everything they do is a part of the game, sort of. The circus is called Le Cirque des Rêves, which means the circus of dreams, and the people who follow it are called les rêveuses, which means the dreamers, which is why I got the tattoo, because I just took the singular feminine form and put that on instead. Everything in the circus is black and white, and everything in the circus, or people who work for the circus, that is, so patrons do not have to wear black and white. However, if you're a rêveur, which is kind of like being a super fan, like you follow the circus around and try to go as much as possible, they often wear black and white in homage to the circus, but then they add something red to show that they are still part of the outside world, which is why I have the top hat. The main character wears a bowler hat, but I like top hats better. Celia wears a top hat. She's not in this picture, but in some cover art versions, she has a top hat on, and then he has a bowler hat. And a red scarf is really common for the rêveurs to wear, so that's why I got the tattoo. And so it's by Erin Morgenstern, I guess in English. Fun fact, that means morning star in German. I think that's nice. And just the way she writes, it's not even so much taking you to another world, it's like it's grabbing you by the throat and dragging you into another world in the best way possible. I don't know how to describe it besides that. But this is my ultimate comfort book. If I'm sad, if I'm scared, if I'm upset, if I just really need some good imagery, I grab this book and I go nuts. She recently released a second book called The Starless Sea. It is not a sequel or anything, it's a completely different book, but it is by the same author, and this was, I think, a 10-year difference, so it was pretty great that she finally just released another book, because people had been like begging her for years and years to write something else because this is so well done, that, you know, she finally did, and that's great. I think I will read I'll read the blurb here, and then I will get The Cuckoo's Calling and read that blurb as well, because I forgot, but I think it's good to have the blurb as well. So, the circus arrives without warning. No announcements precede it. It is simply there, when yesterday it was not. Within the black and white striped canvas tents is an utterly unique experience full of breathtaking amazement. It is called the Cirque des Rêves, and it is only open at night. But behind the scenes, a fierce competition is underway, a duel between two young magicians, Celia and Marco, who have been trained since childhood expressly for this purpose by their mercurial, that's a hard word, instructors. Unbeknownst to them both, this is a game in which only one can be left standing. Amidst the high stakes, Celia and Marco soon tumble headfirst into love, setting off a domino effect of dangerous consequences and leaving the lives of everyone from the performers to the patrons hanging in the balance. So yeah, this is also a love story. And it may seem a little cliche, sort of like enemies to lovers, but it's so beautifully done. I can't even find the words for it. Just read this book. If you listen to any of my suggestions, read this book. And now I will do the Cuckoo's Calling blurb really quickly. So that says, a brilliant debut mystery in a classic vein. Detective Cormoran Strike investigates a supermodel's suicide. After losing his leg to a landmine in Afghanistan, Cormoran Strike is barely scraping by as a private investigator. Strike is down to one client and creditors are calling. He has also just broken up with his longtime girlfriend and is living in his office. Then John Bristow walks through the door with an amazing story. His sister, the legendary supermodel Lula Landry, known to her friends as the Cuckoo, famously fell to her death a few months earlier. The police ruled it a suicide, but John refuses to believe that. The case plunges Strike into the world of multimillionaire beauties, rock star boyfriends, and desperate designers, and it introduces him to every variety of pleasure, enticement, seduction, and delusion known to man. You may think you know detectives, but you've never met one quite like Strike. You may think you know about the wealthy and famous, but you've never seen them under an investigation like this. Introducing Cormoran and Strike, this is the acclaimed first crime novel by J.K. Rowling, writing under the pseudonym Robert Galbraith. If you are interested in any of the books that I have mentioned, I would love it if you went to my bookshop link, which I will put in the description. This is not an ad or anything like that, but I am an affiliate of theirs, which means if you go to my shop and use my affiliate code when you buy the book, which doesn't cost you anything extra, I get, I think, 10% of the profits, which is pretty cool. Bookshop themselves are pretty cool because they are a site that collects independent bookstores, so you are buying not from Amazon or anything like that. You're buying from an independent bookstore near you. And honestly, during this time of self-isolation, I think we all could use a little escapism and a good book. I also have on my shop 3 lists of books that I recommend. So I have gay books or LGBTQ plus books, I think I called it, I don't remember. Books to get lost in, and then interesting true stories. I would recommend all of them. And if you ever want any more book recommendations, feel free to ask me in the comments because I have read so many books in my life. I would be happy to help you find something that is perfect for you. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you find a little bit of joy in finding some of these books, and I will see you next Sunday. Bye.